Star Trek Discovery renewed for season 4. Everybody excited.
Oh, this was. Oh, darn it. Let's just.
Darn it. This is. I have to admit, I was watching the announcement. Sonequa Martin Green. I feel kind of bad. I'll say this. She sounds genuinely enthusiastic about the show. And I noticed that's a difference between what I noticed with some of the Star Wars actors like Daisy Ridley. Because I think deep down the Star Wars actors know they were in a pile of crap. But Sonequa actually does. I think she actually likes the product.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel bad. It's not a good show.
So from what I hear about the behind the scenes on it, I guess that she is definitely not comparable to Captain Manhater. You know, what's her name? What's her name? Brie Larson. You know, because apparently behind the scenes, all of her coworkers like her. She gets along well with everyone. She enjoys what she's doing. You know, God love her for that, right? But the fact is, the fans still hate the show. The fans have absolutely no interest in it. So I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, and I'm glad you're having fun doing what you're doing, and that you believe in it. The fans don't.
Yes.
And that's why this headline is kind of funny, because literally this announcement came out the day after the first episode of season 3 premiered. You haven't even gotten any. Well, of course, it's not like when it was on TV, when we got, viewership numbers and you knew how it was doing in the ratings. And based on that, you would decide whether or not to renew. So what this tells us is they were already planning to do a season 4, regardless of how season 3 was received. And let me tell you something. The initial reactions to the first episode of season 3 have not been very positive.
They keep falling into the same trap. They did it the last season. They're doing it again this season, where it's this big mystery that they have to solve. Yeah. Last season, it was the Red Angel that was going to destroy the universe, and then it wasn't the Red Angel. It was some AI that was never well defined called Control, and didn't. It felt like they were writing it as they were going along.
They absolutely were. I mean, that's come out.
And one of the writers on it got fired because he was not PC on the set. I remember that. That was a big news story.
I know. And it turned out that he was a person of color to begin with. And he's like,
yes.
Do you understand the problem with this?
He was just repeating something he heard. He wasn't even
something that was said to him. Yeah.
I know. It was just,
I know it's freaking ridiculous, but that's the world we live in. So here, if you guys want to hear a good commentary about this particular thing, I recommend Doomcock on this one. The reason I do is because Doomcock has this graphic that he puts up of Mikey Spock, as he calls her, Michael Burnham. Last 2 seasons, everyone was saying how wooden she was and how she couldn't act. It seems like the first episode of this season, they went out of their way to make her manic and crazy and laughing and over the top emoting. And he's got all these freeze frames put together in a collage. She looks psychotic.
Well, is it the acting though, or is it the writing, the scripts that these actors are having to follow on?
I would say it's probably, I don't want to blame the acting too much. I'm going to instead blame the directing. But man, yes, that also does come under the writing too. I will always give the benefit of the doubt to actors that they are just doing what they're told. And the reason I do that is because that's what their job is. If they're doing what they're supposed to, they're doing what they're told to do. And they're doing what the script says, and they're doing what the director tells them to do. But if I see them in multiple roles acting exactly the same way, then I start to go, you know what, they're not very good actors.
I mean, the only other thing I saw around was The Walking Dead.
And she didn't have enough of a role in that for me to be able to make a comparison.
She was a regular person on that show.
I do like Netter's point about Star Trek Discovery being a venereal disease, STD. Now you have the diehards that'll come out and go, well, that's not really the naming convention. It's that's not how.
They should know that we always do acronyms for these series.
Well, and you look for the acronym that's clever and works. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. My mother had the foresight when she named me she named me Troy specifically because some of the other names that she had chosen, she's like, I see how they could shorten that or change it around, or, how it'll get picked on. There's not much you can do with Troy. And honestly, growing up, I had a lot of friends say, you know what? There's not much you can do with Troy. Can't lengthen it, can't shorten it. It's just Troy. I'm like, yep. You can call me a nasty name, but you can't do anything with my name.
Let me see. But the big plot line this season is the burn, all the delay in the far future of the Federation, that everything fell apart because all the dilithium crystals burned up.
Yeah. So Doomcock has a great take on that. Instead of calling it the burn, he keeps calling it the Burnham. And he says, in describing the first episode, he says that the exposition that's given to explain what's happened is, back in the such and such days, this evil villain named Kurtzman, and then he does this whole meta analysis, and he goes, okay, no, that's not really what he said. What he actually said was, but the point is, they're still crapping all over canon, right? Even we thought that by jumping 1,000 years in the future, there's nothing that they can do. No, they've decided that at some point in the past, all dilithium spontaneously combusted, and so now space travel is no longer possible in the future. Well, that's just great. In other words, you're saying that the Star Trek we love is destined to go away. You're again destroying the past, wiping it out.
I'm going to say this. They already made this television series. It was called Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda.
Yeah, good point.
Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, and this was smart what they did on that show. It's not Star Trek, but the system's Commonwealth was basically supposed to be an equivalent to the Federation, right?
Yeah.
Then something goes horribly wrong. There's a peace breakdown with the Nietzscheans because they were going to let the Magog into the Commonwealth, and then the Andromeda gets sucked into a black hole, or at least on the side of a black hole, comes out, and then he's far in the future, and the Commonwealth is gone, and he's trying to reassemble the Commonwealth, and that was fine, I think, as an idea for a show that is not Star Trek. Do you understand?
Right, exactly.
And I like that premise on that show, but I don't like them doing that with Star Trek. Now, I have a suspicion, at least from the trailer I saw for this season, that it's going to be Michael Burnham has to go back in time and stop this from happening.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
Well, yeah, that could be. And if that's the case, the tiny, soft, almost smothered voice in the back of my head, hoping for the best, is saying, well, maybe they've realized how badly they've effed up, and the solution is going to be to go back and wipe out the entire continuity of Discovery in order to fix things. But reality is we've held out hope for far too long, and they keep dashing those hopes. And so we know that's not going to happen. But I don't know how they're going to do it. It's going to have to be the whole ship somehow going back in time, because they're basically ripping off Back to the Future. They've used up their plutonium, and they're going to have to find a lightning bolt to hit them to go back in time, because they have the only dilithium left in the universe, apparently. But also, this first episode sees the destruction of the Red Angel. I guess the way Doomcock described it, she basically had turned into Tony Stark with that armor.
Yeah.
And she uses it to, she sets it on self-destruct and teleports it into whatever it was they needed to destroy to save themselves or whatever. So it gets rid of the MacGuffin from last season.
The whole thing, I remember people were complaining, why is she acting all excited about finding life and all this other stuff? The big thing about the previous season was this AI was going to eventually wipe out all life in the universe. Okay. Yeah. That's why she's excited, but everyone's forgotten about that storyline now. That's what it was. Okay.
Well, that's because it was such a crappy storyline. No one really paid attention to it.
It wasn't fleshed out. Star Trek needs to go back to being episodic. That would help.
But see, again, that's bad writing though. Even in a situation like that, you have to assume that there's people jumping in that haven't seen what went before. So all it takes is one line, there's life, well, what kind of life? It doesn't matter. It's life. Control was going to wipe out all life in the universe. And here we are 1,000 years in the future and there's still life. That means he didn't succeed. Boom, done.
Yeah.
You know, you've brought everyone up to speed and you've answered all the questions. But that's too much like good writing.
Yes.
You know, and that's what 25 seconds that we could have spent preaching.